chasing kiss, for he who call my heart his bliss.
Donna Tartt's audaciously accomplished debut novel of 1992 held a generation of pre-millennium readers spellbound with its inverted murder mystery structure, its descriptive intertwining of the beautiful and the macabre, its hauntingly melancholy tone, and its open-ended invitation to the reader to make some moral sense of the tale it presented, by keeping the views of its own narrator so tantalisingly obscure. It went on to surge in popularity again after the rise of the online fanfiction and fan art era to become the figurehead of the dark academia aesthetic and the forerunner of a whole new subgenre of fiction. But if you wanted just a taste of what makes it so compelling, so good, the two-page prologue has a great deal to offer those with the eyes to see. I'm going to read it in full, and then I'm going to talk about it. It's hard to apply the idea of spoilers to a book that blurts out all the answers to a conventional mystery in its opening lines. That aside, this review is just about spoiler safe. I encourage anyone to read the book, and if you plan to do so for the first time, you may as well do it before watching this video. Hit that subscribe button to help find your way back, or just to show me some love. Let's get into it. The snow in the mountains was melting, and Bunny had been dead for several weeks, before we came to understand the gravity of our situation. He'd been dead for 10 days before they found him, you know. It was one of the biggest manhunts in Vermont history. State troopers, the FBI, even an army helicopter. The college closed, the dye factory in Hamden shut down. People coming from New Hampshire, upstate New York, as far away as Boston. It is difficult to believe that Henry's modest plan could have worked so well, despite these unforeseen events. We hadn't intended to hide the body where it couldn't be found. In fact, we hadn't hidden it at all, but had simply left it where it fell, in hopes that some luckless passer-by would stumble over it before anyone even noticed he was missing. This was a tale that told itself simply and well. The loose rocks, the body at the bottom of the ravine with a clean break in the neck, and the muddy skid marks of dug-in heels pointing the way down. A hiking accident, no more no less. And it might have been left at that, at quiet tears and a small funeral, had it not been for the snow that fell that night. It covered him without a trace, and 10 days later, when the thaw finally came, the state troopers and the FBI and the searchers from the town all saw that they'd been walking back and forth over his body until the snow above it was packed down like ice. It is difficult to believe that such an uproar took place over an act for which I was partially responsible. Even more difficult to believe I could have walked through it. The cameras, the uniforms, the black crowds sprinkled over Mount Cataract, like ants in a sugar bowl, without incurring a blink of suspicion. But walking through it all was one thing. Walking away, unfortunately, has proved to be quite another. And though once I thought I'd left that ravine forever on an April afternoon long ago, now I'm not so sure. Now the searchers have departed, and life has grown quiet around me. I've come to realise that while for years I might have imagined myself to be somewhere else, in reality I've been there all the time. Up at the top of the muddy wheel ruts in the new grass, where the sky is dark over the shivering apple blossoms, and the first chill of the snow that will fall that night is already in the air. "What are you doing up here?" said Bunny, surprised, when he found the four of us waiting for him. "Why, looking for new ferns," said Henry. And after we stood whispering in the underbrush, one last look at the body and a last look round, no drop keys, lost glasses, everybody got everything, and then started single file through the woods, I took one glance back through the saplings that leapt to close the path behind me. Though I remember the walk back, and the first lonely flakes of snow that came drifting through the pines, remember piling gratefully into the car and starting down the road like a family on vacation, with Henry driving clenched-jawed through the potholes and the rest of us leaning over the seats and talking like children. Though I remember only too well the long terrible night that lay ahead and the long terrible days and nights that followed. I have only to glance over my shoulder for all those years to drop away, and I see it behind me again. The ravine, rising all green and black through the saplings, a picture that will never leave me. I suppose at one time in my life I might have had any number of stories, but now there is no other. This is the only story I will ever be able to tell. What makes this prologue so good? Point 1. The mystery elements of the tale are front and centre, to really grab the reader by the throat. How did this contemplative, unassuming character end up taking part in a cold-blooded murder? And how about that closing sentence to absolutely compel you to turn the next page? This is the only story I will ever be able to tell. Point 2. We can see that the writing style is skillful and elegant, and given the length of the book, you can estimate it's over 600 pages before you open the cover. That's going to give a reader confidence that they're offering up their time and attention to someone who merits the investment. Examples. Black crowds of searchers sprinkled over Mount Cataract like ants in a sugar bowl indicates that symbolists will say something informative, as well as offer beautiful images. I took one glance back through the saplings that leapt to close the path behind me. It's another favourite passage of mine. Tartt shows a light touch in deploying a linguistic motif. In the trio of times, we have the phrase, difficult to believe, within the first page. It adds to the music of the piece if you happen to notice it, but it doesn't stand clunkily in the way if you don't. There's a wonderful fluidity to the prose in general. The sentence that starts, "This was a tale that told itself simply and well. The loose rocks, the body at the bottom of the ravine," rolls on and on over 10 lines. But we also have punchier sentences in conversational style to offer the reader's ears some pleasing contrast. "He'd been dead for 10 days before they found him, you know." And later, "We hadn't intended to hide the body where it couldn't be found. In fact, we hadn't hidden it at all." But pretty writing isn't enough. I can enjoy reading poetry in small doses for its lyricism. I can, just about, get through 200 or so pages of Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse and grimly admire the art of its prose. But for 600 pages, you need something that's going to pull you through the chapters. And that thing, greatest of all elements of any work of fiction, is a story. The opening lines give us our hook, but how do we know there's enough story to justify the expanse of pages ahead? We can't know that for sure, of course, but brevity, as Shakespeare said, is the soul of wit. So point 3 is that when we can see a writer has a mastery of the succinct, we can be confident that 600 pages won't be spent in dithering and working round to the point and unnecessary description. The prologue, you see, gives us a powerful sense of Tartt's brevity. Here's what I mean. Let's think about all the things the 2-page prologue has told us. In terms of context, it's told us that our setting is the modern era, due to the reference to search helicopters, that we're in the mountains of Vermont, and that it is a wintry April. Of the crime, it tells us that Bunny, who is male, is the victim. He went over a ravine, Henry planned it, and a group of conspirators carried it out, and that a high-profile manhunt has resulted. And finally, the narrator. We know the narrator claims co-responsibility, is left with a sense of guilt and regret, and has escaped punishment. For such a glossy display of literary elegance, it's clinically concise. We can also think about what the prologue hasn't told us, how the murder came about and so forth. Naturally, this is not divulged, as this is the mystery we correctly infer is going to be revealed to us as we read. But another question we might think to ask is, what doesn't this tell us about the narrator? Read it through again. It tells us almost nothing about the narrator, not their gender, age, name, occupation, or anything about their relationship to the victim or the murderers. And isn't that just the most fitting enigma to smuggle into the reader's head? Because what becomes apparent to us as we read, and as the surface level mysteries are being laid out, is that a second layer of mystery is at play, due to everything we know being filtered through the thoughts of Richard Papin, surely the most passive, unforthcoming, inscrutable main character literature ever produced. The prologue tells us he has this chameleonic quality of being able to step through his own life story unnoticed, blending in with whatever background he's wandered into. He offers up so little information about himself, beyond what he's doing and thinking at the moment he's recounting, that on the rare occasions when we're given a direct view of him from the eyes of others, like when his classmates reveal that they thought him just as mysterious as he'd thought them, with his cool reserve and his habit of ducking into doorways to avoid people, that the burst of unfiltered insight is intoxicating. It couldn't be a great prologue if it wasn't a tremendous book, but as it truly is a tremendous book, that's why I'm saying that this is the perfect prologue. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a nice day.